Hello friends, we'll be discussing an illustration which will be related to the comprehensive discussion of calls in arrears and calls in advance. Now, in this illustration, we'll be understanding in depth about only calls in arrears and calls in advance. So, this illustration, when we go ahead and prepare, we'll understand the basic details that are supposed to be required in terms of calculations of calls in arrears, in terms of calculation of calls in advance, interest on calls in arrears and interest on calls in advance, etc. So, let's figure out with this illustration what exactly do we have here, or what basic details that are supposed to be provided into the question. So, let's jot down the question first. Now, this question that we are dealing with refers to a company who issued 20,000 equity shares at rupees 10 each. Now, this rupees 10 was then further segregated into 4 categories: application, allotment, first and final call. Now, the company has received an application for 40,000 shares, that is twice the amount which has been issued, or twice the value which has been issued here. Now, the thing that company has done here is that the pro rata allotment has been done. Let's figure out how exactly has been done here. Now, they have given the details here of how the pro rata allotment has been done. 10,000 shares were directly rejected. Out of that 20,000 additional what we have received, 5,000 shares were fully allotted here. And the balance was in the ratio of, for every 2 shares, or rather for every 4 shares, 2 shares were allotted. That means if you have applied for 4 shares, you will get 2 shares here. Now, the question has given certain details about calls in arrears, calls in advance, and what exactly we're supposed to do. Now, there is one applicant named as X to whom 1,000 shares were allotted, who failed to pay the allotment money here. Y was another shareholder to whom 600 shares were allotted, and it didn't pay the final call money here. Z was another shareholder to whom 2,000 shares were allotted, and he paid the final and first call money at the time of allotment itself. So now we are supposed to prepare the journal entry for all these transactions, all these things, and then we are supposed to prepare the share capital account and the bank account as a ledger account here. So let's start with the working of pro rata first. So the first thing here will be calculation of pro rata. Let's figure out how exactly it's supposed to be done. Again, the page will be divided into 2 parts, that is application and allotment. So as in the question, they have stated that 10,000 shares were completely rejected. So that's the first category here. The second category refers to 5,000 shares being completely allotted, that means full allotment here. And third refers to the balance where the pro rata allotment was mentioned, that means for every 4 shares applied, 2 shares will be provided here. Now, before that we could go ahead with that, let's figure out the total here. 40,000 is the application that we have received, 20,000 is the balance that is left here, that means out of whatever balance we have. So let me give you a quick example. If the line states that out of the balance what is left in excess, the ratio has been given as 4 shares applied, 2 will be provided. So out of that additional 20,000 balance we're talking about, if you take the whole balance of 40,000 and out of that if you deduct 15,000 and whatever balance is taken, that will be incorrect. So make sure you go ahead with the pro rata calculation in a better way. So the balance 5,000 that we have, that means additional volume that was received by us. Out of that balance, we have gone ahead and mentioned that for every 4 shares applied, we will be providing 2 shares. So that means 2,500 shares basically have been provided. Now, if you see the difference between the application and the allotment, you will figure out the balancing figure here. So that pro rata allotment has divided the total number of shares into 4 categories. First, rejection. Second, full allotment of 5,000. Third refers to another set of 5,000 shares whereby pro rata allotment was mentioned, of every 4 share applied, 2 shares will be provided, 2,500 shares there. And the balance 20,000 has been given 12,500 ratio here. Now, the pro rata calculation has been done. Now we'll go ahead with the recording of journal entries first. So the first entry that we'll mention here is the receipt of application method, that is bank account debit to share application account. Amount will be 40,000 multiplied by 3. So the total amount that we have received on application is 1,20,000, out of which we'll be mentioning the refunded amount. So let's pass the refund entry now. The amount will be 10,000 rupees multiplied by 3, or rather 10,000 shares multiplied by 3. That will give you a value of 30,000 that has been refunded here. Now, the next will be transfer of only application money towards the capital account. Now, if you see people who have additionally applied for like maybe somewhere around 5,000 shares, the next set of whatever amount was there, for the rata or rather the pro rata ratio where has been applied 5 or rather 4 is to 2, 4 applied, 2 allotted. Now the next thing that will be passing here is the allotment amount, or rather if you see in that pro rata allotment we have figured out that for 5,000 shares only 2,500 shares were allotted, and for the balance 20,000 shares only 12,500 shares were allotted. So whatever additional amount that we have here, we need to figure out how much is the allotment money that has to be transferred. Let's figure out that part. Now the first share application account, that means the entry that we first here is share application account debit to share capital to share allotment, because excess money has to be used in allotment transfer here. So out of 1,20,000, if you have already subtracted 30,000, that will give us the balance that we have left in the application account. So 90,000 we have. In the capital account, we are only supposed to transfer amount related to application. So the balance that we have here is 30,000 that we already have in allotment account. If you have to verify that, you can easily verify it. So out of 5,000 shares, that means the third category, 5,000 shares, you have only allotted 2,500. So there you have 2,500 shares. Out of those 20,000 shares, you have only allotted 12,500 shares. That means 7,500 is still there. Total of both these shares will be 10,000 shares, which if we multiply by application money, 30,000 is in already excess with you. Now when it comes to allotment due, you will be doing, or rather you will be further going ahead with the allotment due entry first, then you will mention the allotment amount, or rather if there is any calls in arrears or calls in advance that has to be taken into consideration or not. So let's figure out that part, allotment due entry now. So ideally 60,000 is the amount you are supposed to receive here, but if you already have 30,000 in advance related to share allotment, you won't be receiving 60,000, you will be receiving only 30,000. That means you can expect only 30,000 to be received. On contrary, you also have another amount which refers to the allotment amount, or rather the account which refers to allotment calls in arrears and advance. Let's figure out that part. Now in this question they have also mentioned that X was one shareholder who didn't pay the allotment money, and Z was one shareholder who paid the allotment money as well as the final call and first call amount together. So when you receive the amount, or rather whenever the amount is supposed to be received, we'll mention that calls in arrears and that calls in advance as well here. Now the first thing that we'll be mentioning here is whatever amount is due and whatever is not supposed to be received, we'll be mentioning it here. So share allotment, we're supposed to receive 60,000, we'll mention that on the credit side. One person who has already paid the allotment plus first and final call, that is calls in advance, we can also figure out the amount. So there is one person who paid 4 rupees additional, that is 2,000 into 4 will give you 8,000 amount he has already paid up. One person who didn't pay the allotment money refers to 1,000 multiplied by 3 rupees. On the other hand, share allotment which we already have in excess with us, that is 3,000 rupees, or rather 30,000 rupees we already have in excess, we are not supposed to take that amount because that is related to the pro rata adjustment. Now whatever balancing figure is there, that will be the bank account transfer. So ideally we have received 35,000 here in total. After this we'll be mentioning the first call due entry. So the amount that we have passed here is share first call account debit to share capital account, 20,000 into 2 rupees, that is 40,000 rupees is what we are expecting. Now let's go ahead and pass the receipt entry here. So the next entry will refer to receipt of first call. Now in the question there was no mention of first call not being paid by any of the shareholder. So that means in this case there is no scenario where we can talk about the amount being received, or rather there is one just scenario where calls in advance has been already paid up, so we'll take that into consideration. So now we'll be taking the consideration of calls in advance that we've already received for the first call by one shareholder who has already paid 2 rupees of first call. So that will be taking. So ideally we're not supposed to receive complete 40,000 here because calls in advance has been already done here. So the entry here is bank account debit, calls in advance account debit to specifically related share first call here. Bank account will be debited with 36,000, calls in advance 4,000, and the next part will be share first call 40,000. Similarly, we'll do the receipt and due entry for share final call. So 40,000 is the amount that we're supposed to receive here. Again, in this receipt, there will be certain calls in advance, calls in arrears as well. So share final call expected amount was 40,000, out of which calls in advance were 4,000 rupees because he had already paid 2 rupees in advance. Calls in arrears were 600 into 2, that it was to 1200 rupees because one shareholder he didn't pay the final call. So after subtracting both these things from 40,000, whatever balance is left will be moved to the bank account. So that will be 34,800. Now with this journal entries closure has been done. Now we'll prepare the two ledger accounts that we're supposed to prepare, that is share capital and bank account, and we'll mark the closure of the sum. So let's start with them. Now again, the share capital account will be prepared in the format whereby wherever credit side entries are done and wherever debit side entries are done, ideally it will be most of the credit side entries. So we'll mention that first, right from application till final call. Now apart from all these entries, there are no other entries, so this will be a balancing figure. That means we have to figure out on the debit side, that will be a balancing amount. So share capital account has been prepared. The next part will be bank account here. Now again, all the entries where bank is related will post those entries, starting with application. So the first entry that we have passed here is to application account 1,20,000 that we have received, and the refund that was made has been mentioned on the credit side. Again, we'll be mentioning it for the receipt entries now. So the entries have been passed here. We just need to figure the balancing amount. So the balancing figure that we have figured out here is 1,95,800. That means that is the amount that will be shown on the asset side of the balance sheet. So this is how you prepare the calls in arrears, calls in advance, ledger accounts of share capital and bank account. I hope this video has given you a clarity about all these concepts, or rather solving these concepts. So thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and keep subscribing to Ekeeda.